of people becoming incarcerated. I could tell you, one of the speakers today talked about the particular disproportionate impact of women and their issues, and we think that everyone should be raising the gender inequity that's happening in incarceral settings. Our counselor is arriving. He'll get settled shortly. We're so grateful for Ed Flynn, who's not a stranger here to Boston Praise Radio, Open TV Network, and certainly not a stranger to Global Ministries Christian Church. He's a friend of Pastor Bruce Wall. He's worshiped with us on Sunday mornings. He's helped to advocate for us, and he's a regular. Council, you could be at that seat only because that's that the camera's already set for you. I'm so sorry. And so he's a friend. He's our brother, and we're so grateful that he would take time out of his busy schedule to be able to join us today and just to kind of get us caught up with what's happening. Post now that everybody has settled in, post their the new slate, post the campaign, and now they're settling in, preparing to be inaugurated. He is an incumbent. So without further ado, welcome my friend, welcome our brother, Counselor Ed Flynn. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Pastor Hobbs. It's good to be with you, and always love coming over here and talking to you and to Larry Ellison and to Pastor Bruce Wall, but have incredible respect for all of the team over here for the work you do in the neighborhoods, always giving back, supporting a lot of nonprofits, supporting our returning citizens and families in need. So honored to be here with you, Pastor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. So talk to us now that the things are settled post the election. How you feeling? Were you challenged at all, or did you?
I was challenged. I had two opponents in District 2, which includes South Boston, the South End, and Chinatown, a little bit of Back Bay, Beacon Hill, but also the Bay Village. So I had two opponents, and I did well. I got 86% of the vote.
Wow.
In the preliminary, and I believe I got 86% as well in the general election, the final election. So
that's great.
I worked hard and continue to work hard. I love the job. I love serving the residents of my district and the city. Mm-hmm. And I focus on quality of life issues, neighborhood services, and kind of the nuts and bolts of city government. Mm-hmm. And I love the job and listening in working with the residents of Boston. But we do have significant challenges. Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid to tackle those issues.
Okay. What are those significant challenges that you would say?
I believe certainly the economy is a major challenge and problem we're facing right now. Our declining enrollment in the Boston public school system as well. We're actually closing schools, and the troubling academic results as well. Some public safety issues, and in the delivery of basic city services. Mm-hmm. Also is a top concern. Mm-hmm. But I think Boston needs, especially in the city council, we need positive leadership. Mm-hmm. And working together to try to bring the best services we can for the residents of Boston. But that also ensures that we show up to work. Mm-hmm. And advocate for our districts. Mm-hmm. And that's what I encourage my fellow city councilors to do, is to come to work, show up, work hard, know how the city works, and tackle issues in front of you. Don't be afraid to address controversial issues. Mm-hmm. And represent the people the best you can. Mm-hmm. Even if you pay a penalty, a price with the city administration, mm-hmm. your job is to represent the residents, not the city administration.
I appreciate that. With that said, let's go to one of those issues we know that is the school committee. You talked about the closing schools. You talked about the merging of schools. We know that the superintendent has just got a sizable raise. This is, I believe, one of the oldest school systems in the country.
That's correct.
With that said, what are your feelings with regard to a fully elected school committee? There was a non-binding referendum, and overwhelmingly, the people who elected people to be said that they want a fully elected school committee, as every other municipality has throughout the Commonwealth. What are your thoughts?
Well, before I answer that, I do want to say for the record, when my father was mayor,
Yep.
he was in support of a school committee that was appointed by the mayor.
Okay.
Obviously, I love my father, respect him, but I disagree with him on that issue. I believe it should be an elected position, and the school committee should answer to the residents of Boston.
Okay.
I think it should be a fully elected school committee. No hybrid options, fully elected, whether it's 4 or 5 or 6 people on the school committee, run for the job, represent the constituents, represent the parents, and improve academic results. But what happened, Pastor Hobbs, is the residents of the city were very clear that they wanted an elected school committee, but the city council did not provide the leadership necessary to advocate for that position. The city council did nothing over the last 2 years, in my opinion, in terms of trying to encourage or support an elected school committee. So we lost ground on that, even though the residents spoke in favor of an elected official, elected school committee. The Boston City Council wasn't really on record in support of that. So disappointing.
Well, I appreciate your leadership on that, and I, as we're having every person who's this new slate, who's the current slate, because quite candidly, there weren't a lot of. I mean, the at-large city council remains what it was.
Yep.
Right. There was no one that was a new person. We have a new person coming into for District 7, Reverend Culpepper.
Reverend Culpepper. Yep.
I'm not. Who are the other new folks that were elected? I'm off the top of my head. I can go to my sheet. But are you cognizant of who's the new people that may be coming in as replacing someone who actually was already the current slate prior to this preliminary?
No, Pastor. That said, is Reverend Culpepper is the only
That's what I
person coming on board. Everyone else is returning. 12 people. I'm sorry, and Reverend Culpepper is the 13th city councilor. But the city council has to stand up to the administration and advocate for a return of the elected school committee. Henry Santana is the chair of the Public Education Committee, the Public Safety Committee, but we didn't focus on that issue at all over the last 2 years, and we didn't provide the positive leadership necessary to the residents of Boston, even though they asked us to. They specifically requested us through that vote to support an elected school committee. The city council decided no, they knew better.
With that said, so what would you encourage the voters who voted overwhelmingly, and though the leadership didn't, because there's some people who feel like that's why they don't vote, because they're like, they don't listen anyway, right? So what would you say to people who did participate? And let me just back up. 19% of the population that actually registered to vote, per my understanding, if my numbers are correct, actually even bothered to show up and cast a ballot. Those are people who are registered. Never mind people who've never been a part of the process or who've checked out of the process. But those who are actually registered voters, 19% of the population actually bothered to cast a ballot to make that decision. And even in the preliminary, which is why Michelle Wu, our mayor, was, I believe at that point, in the preliminary, many people dropped out. Josh Kraft, Domingo DeRosa dropped out because it was 19% of the population that actually bothered to cast a ballot in the preliminary. And when Michelle Wu got elected the first time, and hear me, I'm not bashing the mayor because she's done some things well. I'm just talking about us being civically engaged. 35% of registered voters actually bothered to cast a ballot. So my point is, people are, for whatever reasons, becoming cynical and not engaged. Those who even participate, never mind those who've never participated or have checked out of the process. So what would you say to people whom did actually bother to respond to the referendum? Now, would you encourage them to all call their elected officials and push them to actually make that elected school committee happen?
Well, it's a good question, Pastor. You can see why people don't have faith in confidence in city government when voters overwhelmingly voted for an elected school committee, and then the city council and the mayor's office says, well, we know you voted 70% in favor of it, but we know better. We know better than you do, so we're going to continue with the status quo. So what does a resident say that voted for an elected official? Well, it probably says that you don't matter. Your vote doesn't matter. And that's a discouraging attitude to receive. And it's not a vote of confidence also in the city government. That means people check out of politics and don't get involved civically. But what I would say directly to answer your question, Pastor, is residents need to, even though it's disappointing that they weren't respected by city council, they still need to be involved. They still need to pick up the phone and email.
Yep.
And when they see their elected officials at neighborhood parks or cookouts, ask them to support an elected school committee and put some pressure on them, and don't accept no for an answer. Keep advocating and keep focusing on what your position is, because residents, they do matter and they are important. And the answers are not at City Hall. They're in the neighborhoods of Boston. And residents know best. And residents know what's best for the school committee, for the school department and their children. And that is having a seat at the table. That's all they're asking for. A little bit of respect, having a voice. That's not a lot to ask for. And we should respect the wishes of the residents.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. With that said, with the elected school committee, another variable is the youth voice, right? Students are the people who actually are going to the schools, right? Parents, they need to be the people who elect the elected officials that have across the Commonwealth, their children go to school, but it's actually the children who actually go to the school. So I think that there's a youth vote or a youth voice, but I don't know that it's a youth vote.
Yeah, it's a youth member on the school committee without the vote. So not sure how effective that is. If you're invited to all the meetings, you're invited to participate. But by the way, you can't vote on this controversial issue. That's discouraging also. I'm not saying I support a young person on the school committee or don't support them. But if they are on the school committee, they should have a right to a vote. They deserve that. If they show up every day, if they show up when their meeting takes place, they deserve and earn the right to cast a vote. That's what I believe in.
Thank you so much. So that school committee, and so with regard to the closing of the schools, with regard to the merging of the schools, there's some folks that are really unhappy about that. What is your position with regard to, is that something that we need to do? Some of the schools are falling apart. I don't know that they built a new school. I know Charles Yancey for a long time has been advocating for a new high school. So what is your position with regard to the closing of the schools, the merging of the schools, and the status of our public school system?
I think almost everyone agrees that we do have to merge schools. We do have to close schools because of the declining enrollment of students in the Boston public schools. But when we do that, it should be a transparent process. Parents should be involved. Teachers should be involved. Students should be involved as well. That's a critical part of it, is the communication and outreach. Here's an example, Pastor Hobbs. The Boston school superintendent announced, I believe, 4 schools would close. However, the Boston City Council has never held a hearing on that issue. For whatever reason, we decided it's not appropriate for the Boston City Council to have a discussion about closing of schools. So we haven't had that discussion in 2 years. So if the Boston City Council is not going to have a hearing on it, what does that say to the residents? Who is their voice? How are they going to get their voice heard? So it's important for residents and parents and teachers and students to be heard during this process. It's a difficult process. It's a controversial process. It's emotional. But we have to be transparent. I think if you have bad news and you're honest with people, I think people can deal with that.
Absolutely.
But you have to be honest with them. You have to be upfront, transparent, listen to them, respect them. We haven't done that.
Let's drill a little down further on the school system with regard to the John D. O'Brien, right? You
Yep.
talk about transparency. You talk about, things happening in the community. We know there was a period of time that not long ago, the John D. O'Brien was proposed to be moved without any consideration, any process. And people who were graduates of the John D. O'Brien were up in arms.
Right.
My understanding is John D. O'Brien would have been turning in his grave. This is my understanding. I didn't go to the John D. O'Brien, but again, it's about transparency. It's about process. And it's about hearing the people. And I would say in that instant, I think people were heard because there was some protest, and hence it's still there. I don't know what that means about for how long.
Right. Well, that's a good point because residents did fight back, and alumni and supporters of the school fought back against the city.
Yep.
And I was one of the first elected officials to come out publicly against the proposal. In Pastor Hobbs, the plan was to move the school over to West Roxbury.
Correct.
It was the West Roxbury Educational Complex there off of VFW Parkway, almost in Dedham, walking distance to Dedham. So could you imagine coming from East Boston in the morning, trying to get to Dedham, to the John D. O'Brien in West Roxbury? It would take you an hour and a half at 7 o'clock in the morning, at 7:30 in the morning. And then if you want to play sports or come home after school is over, another 2 hours. And if you're playing sports, you get home late at night. It wasn't fair to people, students in all of the neighborhoods of Boston. The John D. O'Brien, in my opinion, belongs in the heart of the black community as well. That's an important part of moving the city forward, not just public education, but employment, job training, technical training. It should be in the middle of the black community where students learn about technology, about critical skills that they need to get a job in this advanced economy. So that's where I stand. We need a state-of-the-art John D. O'Brien school, whether it's at the current location or somewhere in Roxbury or Dorchester. But it should be our top priority is rebuilding John D. O'Brien. We're working to ensure that maybe there's a possibility for the Mass State Building Authority, which also contributes to a building of a new school through reimbursements. That's under the State Treasurer's Office. They could play a role in terms of funding. But it's up to the residents of Boston and to the city administration. We have to advocate for a new state-of-the-art John D. O'Brien school. I went to a technical high school in Boston, not a public school. I went to Don Bosco High School. But students there learned about electricity, carpentry, electronics, woodworking, graphic arts, computer science, computer technology, critical training programs that could not just get you a job, but get you a good career.
Absolutely. I too went to a vocational technical high school out in Whittier Regional Vocational Technical High School. Okay. And quite candidly, it was a wonderful experience. Academics were not my strength, but my hands, and I loved culinary arts. I did distributive education. I did several ones that I tried out, but ultimately, and I was able to do a career, and I was able to be employed. And
right.
So the vocation is something that we desperately need, and it wasn't just for the students. We had a restaurant that was actually for people in the community, that they would come and they would be able to have a wonderful experience while the students are being trained and not be gouged. Right?
That's right.
So I think we need to put more resources into vocational training and be able to expand it even for adults who are able to go to school in the nighttime.
Right. I've been to the John D. O'Brien several times recently, and in fact saw their electricity program. They have a good partnership with Local 103, IBEW. But that's a great opportunity for young people to get into the building trades, partnering, so you can learn about electricity, you can learn about woodworking, and then hopefully after you graduate, get into the apprenticeship program. An opportunity for the apprenticeship program is critical. The building trades want to get involved in helping our Boston public school system. I think Worcester probably has the best technology high school, tech high school in the state.
Really?
And it's exceptional. I talked to the former Lieutenant Governor, Tim Murray, about it. And I'm glad for Worcester and happy for them, but Boston should really be the number one city that has the best technical high school in the state. Not Worcester, nothing to disparage them, but Boston should really have
Set the tone.
set the tone. Exactly right. We're not there, but I'm not giving up on that. I think we residents deserve a state-of-the-art technical high school.
Outstanding. Thank you. While we're on catching, I'm going to go this last thing with education, and this is our colleges, our higher institutions of learning, right? This is the educational mecca of the world.
Yep.
And with that, we know this issue of payment in lieu of taxes, where colleges don't have to. Many of them are taking up a lot of real estate, right? And people are coming from all across the country. I understand that there's 2% is what I understand, if that's accurate, of people who are born here who actually attend the universities. People come from all over the world.
That's right.
But they're not taxpayers.
Right.
So we've got to do something to be able to hold these institutions more accountable, to be able to give more back to the places that they're generating all this revenue from people outside who are now coming there. It seems that there's a lot of building preparing for people that they actually will stay here, but not for the people who actually are natives of here.
That's right. It's a huge issue. The nonprofits, these colleges and universities, they're not paying their fair share. They should be paying their fair share. We need to hold them accountable. The same percentage or the same figure hasn't changed in over a decade, and it needs to be updated with the times. They need to pay their fair share, and they're sitting on property that's is non-taxable. For example, Harvard University, they have more property in Boston than they do in Cambridge.
Really?
And so that property they have in Boston, for the most part, is not taxed.
Wow.
And it's taking land away from residents that could build affordable housing or economic development, but also the residents of Boston don't see that taxes coming in because their payment in lieu of taxes. They pay something, but it's not what they should be paying. And it's important for colleges and universities and some hospitals too. Our hospitals are struggling, but it's important for everybody to pay their fair share because they use the police, they use the fire services, inspectional services, other quality of life services that the city of Boston provides. It's only fair, and residents are asking for respect during this process and asking that the pilot be increased, and we need to do a better job on that. I know the city is sitting at the table with several colleges and universities now trying to negotiate a deal with some of them, but it also needs to be transparent too.
Yes. Let's go to community-based colleges. I just came from a conference at Harvard, and this was a conference from the Economic Justice Institute.
Okay.
And it was a very interesting conference put on by, this was the Massachusetts Prison Education Consortium.
Okay.
And they were talking about community college education and county corrections, right? And so what we learned, one of the keynote speakers was talking about how education was integral to his successful reentry back into community, whether that's your high set, whether that's just literacy, right? But education and community support or family ties were the two things that was most important to facilitate or stop recidivism, particularly when we're talking about intergenerational incarceration. And so we were talking about how do we be innovative? We've got schools like community colleges, but my thing was the community college programs, though they're free, right? And unfortunately, people who are incarcerated can't access them. So there are some programs that they're doing, but you've got to come out, or there's some limited kinds of programs. But we can use technology to be able to have virtual classes behind the wall, right? So you're starting that education right from behind the wall, and people can start to then transition back into society and go into the brick and mortar. Rachel Rollins, who has a program called The Fort, that's housed at Roxbury Community College. She comes with us as a volunteer going behind the wall. And this is a vision that she has, is to be able to start to have courses virtually, and she will come behind the wall and meet with you to offer that community support while you're behind the wall. And when you come out from behind the wall, you'll be enrolled in the brick and mortar at Roxbury Community College and continue to have that support to help you to actually, whether it's trade, whether it's a licensure, whether it's a degree. And I would submit, even for it to be something like the program that they had at UMass Boston campus, that was the College of Public and Community Service, where you had life skills and other things that you've done that you can be able to use toward your certificate for public service. I know that was a whole political football, and I think it actually doesn't even exist anymore, the College of Public and Community Service that was at UMass. But do you understand what I'm talking about? To be able to utilize the community college, have it virtual, and then life skills that you can come back in the community to set you up for success.
Yeah, and want to acknowledge your work, Pastor Hobbs, in supporting returning citizens, critical work. I also want to say thank you and acknowledge the former district attorney too, Rachel Rawlings, for that work as well. And you are right. Community colleges play a critical role. You could possibly, if the program is developed, you could possibly get an associate's degree and then maybe transfer into a 4-year college with only maybe 2 years left. But community college is a great place to start and get your credits. It's free. And a lot of community colleges focus on, technology skills and technical skills, workforce development.
Yes.
And that's what's needed.
Desperately.
No, people don't need a job. They need a career.
They do.
And they need the skills and the tools to have a career. And you can learn that at Bunker Hill Community College. You can learn that at Roxbury Community College. There's a program in downtown Boston called the Urban College, and they focus on secondary education, and it's 90% students are women of color, and they get an associate's degree out of the Urban College. But I have great confidence and faith in Roxbury Community College and Bunker Hill. They're almost unsung heroes in the city.
Yes.
I also know that Boston University has a bachelor's program for people incarcerated in state prison.
Okay.
And people in prison, in jail, 95% of them are coming home, and they're coming back to the neighborhood they grew up in or where their family's at. We want them to come back with skills, with training, with an education, with a plan. And if you have some skills and that can take you to an associate's degree, to get a bachelor's degree and then get a career, that's putting the person on a path to living a healthy and happy life. They may have made a mistake or two in their life, but they still want to contribute. They want to raise a family.
That's right.
They want to have a job, support their family, become a good member of society. And we need to ensure that we provide them with the opportunity to engage in a career, engage in training, and we can't give up on those people.
That's right.
They deserve another opportunity.
Absolutely. Operation Exit. I was learned of this program, interesting enough, via Josh Kraft, who was running for mayor. And he made me aware that this was a program that existed under the Walsh administration that ended under the Wu administration for whatever reason, and that his desire, though he didn't win mayor and dropped out in the preliminary, I understand that, in fact, he's going to come on and talk about that himself, but my understanding is he's going to form a nonprofit organization and resurrect Operation Exit. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a great idea. I think Josh has been involved in the community for a long time. In my opinion, he has a lot of credibility. He's dedicated and loves the city and the people. I think there's a critical need to have such a program in Boston, whether it's a nonprofit or it's through the city of Boston or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But I do know that Josh is going to engage in that, and I support him. I'd love to get involved in it and help that program. As a former probation officer, for 8 years at Suffolk Superior, that's what I did all day is trying to help people get into job training programs, educational programs, and counseling programs. But the most frustrating aspect of it, Pastor Hobbs, as well, is Corey reform needs to happen again. Governor Patrick did a great job with Corey reform. We could go a little further also. When my probationers would get a job, they would be working 1 week or 2 weeks. Their background check would come back to their boss. And even though they were working hard, they were doing well, they were working 40, 50 hours a week, they were showing up on time, being productive, the boss would come back and say, hey, hey, Ed, your Corey came back. We can't keep you on. We know you've been here 2 weeks, but we can't keep you. And when the probationer came back to me and told me that story, that person was extremely disappointed and depressed and said to me, hey, Ed, what's the point of being a law-abiding citizen if society is not giving me a chance? I'm doing everything you're asking me to do. I have a job. I'm working hard. I'm working overtime. I'm showing up on time. And by the way, you guys are saying to me that we're not important because the Corey came back and said you can't work anymore. So we have to be more understanding and supportive of returning citizens when it comes to employment and training and in other aspects as well.
So the Operation Exit program, can you elaborate? Because I just heard some of it, but if you are familiar with it, my understanding is it's helping people participate in the unions and the building trades, essentially.
Yes, it's giving people an opportunity coming out of prison, coming out of jail, but giving them the opportunity, you're exactly right, to apply for apprenticeship programs in the building trades in other companies as well. But getting into the building trades at times can be difficult in terms of getting into the apprenticeship program. But I do think a lot of people coming out of jail and prison want to work.
Sure.
They don't want a handout. They want training. They want to work hard. They want to work 50 hours a week.
Sure.
They want to make a salary and have a career, and they're willing to work in the apprenticeship program because it's going to help them and their family, and they're not afraid of hard work.
No.
And we need to give them the opportunity to be successful and to be and to live a healthy life. Working in the building trades is not just a job; it's a career. It's a clear path to the middle class as well. And returning citizens deserve an opportunity to be happy and healthy, just like everybody else.
In the building trades, I'm confident that you're familiar with T. Michael Thomas, and he has a unique niche with the copper fabrication, with art, as well as all the things it takes for building and even roofing. And do you support T. Michael Thomas and the People's Academy?
Yes, I do. I've spoken to T. Michael many times. I'm actually going back and forth with him now, texting. I know he's looking for some support from City Hall. We're trying to open some doors for him. I'll be honest with you, it has been challenging trying to get things done at City Hall for People's Academy. But having said that, I'm not giving up, and will continue to advocate for T. Michael, because I've been at his program and I've seen the good work that he's done, and he wants to give back and help young people, or help people coming out of jail or prison, or helping people in need get a career. So he deserves the opportunity to continue that.
Thank you so much. So I want to say congratulations. I understand most recently, in fact, I think it was Rusi Lejeune, if I'm not mistaken, who was in that very seat, who came in post the election. Now, I believe, are you presently the president, or was she the president? Or
Yeah, I'm the former president. She's the current president.
Okay.
And her term ends the end of this month. And then the city council will be voting for a city council president at the first meeting we have in early January, the day we get sworn in. So I believe there's well, I know there's at least three people, I should say, running for city council president right now.
Who determines the other councilors?
The other city councilors, Brian Worrell is a candidate. Gigi Coletta is a candidate, and Julia Mahir is a candidate. Whoever, you try to put together a coalition of 7 votes, and then at the first day of the city council meeting, that's one of the first duties you have, is electing a city council president. So that election is already underway.
And that person will serve as president for how long? For the 2 years?
For 2 years, and there's term limit, so you can't run again. But it's an important position because you pick the various committee chairs, but also you kind of represent the city council at various events or functions. You also, which is another critical part, is overseeing the city council central staff. So it's a kind of a administrative job as well. You need to be in the city council every day during the week. You can't really be outside, going to event. It's being in City Hall 9 to 5, dealing with administrative duties. That's what the job of a city councilor is about. It's also managing city council central staff.
As the president?
As the president.
Okay. With that said, as the president, we understood, because it's happened in the event that something should happen to the mayor, i.e. they leave, whatever happens, the president becomes the interim or acting mayor?
Acting mayor. And that has happened when my father was mayor. Tom Menino was the city council president. He became acting mayor, as well as Kim Janey, who was the city council president, and she became acting mayor.
Correct.
So not sure if that will happen, but there's always a possibility that the next city council president could be the acting mayor, although unlikely. It's a possibility. That
can happen. In the event, for whatever reason, that the mayor vacates that seat, that's what happens, is the president becomes acting.
The president becomes acting, and I believe an election would happen, whether it's 90 days or 120 days thereafter. But the city council president would serve as acting mayor for
whatever period of time.
For a period of time, yeah.
Until they're elected.
Yeah, it could be 5 or 6 months. It could be longer.
With that said, I want to say congratulations with codifying the Office of Returning Citizens as an official office of the administration. Talk about that, because I want to say that I recall when there was no Office of Returning Citizens. I recall when the Office of Returning Citizens had 0 budget. There were hearings, Brian Worrell and Bruce Lejeune, and we advocated for a budget.
Yep.
And that budget was then advanced. And while, that's great to have the budget increased, it now being codified as an official office of the administration is huge.
It's big. I voted in favor of codifying that and funding it as well. But the real credit really goes to Councilor Worrell. He was the leader on that. He fought for it. He advocated for it. He did a tremendous job of explaining why it's important. And he went around individually to each councilor explaining why it's important. I knew it was important because of my experience in probation, but Brian took the lead and convinced people that this is an important department. And, I admire that hard work that he put into it. But it's important that residents know that this is an official city department and that will function as a city department, providing critical services and support to returning citizens, some of the services we mentioned. But it's an opportunity for returning citizens to also decide how the department itself reaches out to residents, and their lived experience, in my opinion, is important on how we communicate and reach people, reach returning citizens. But also, I think what's important, Pastor Hobbs, is talking to people while they're incarcerated as well. As a city, whether it's at the House of Correction or whether it's in state prison, but you need a plan. before you get out. Housing is a critical aspect
Major
of it.
aspect.
If you don't have a housing plan by the time you get out, you're almost setting yourself up, unfortunately, for being rearrested for various reasons.
Absolutely.
Because you're going to be homeless, you're going to be couch surfing, and you're frustrated. You don't have money, you don't have a job, and you can't survive like that.
You're absolutely right. Housing is the number one critical thing. As I said, I just came from a conference, and while they're talking about education and that being important to facilitate workforce development, with that said, housing, right, they said having a connected ties to your family and community was the other major thing that you needed to have. But some people don't have family.
Right.
Some people, it's just them. Some people are homeless. Some people were indigent, right?
Right.
So housing is the number one thing that people need, but not just housing, but with supports, wraparound kinds of services. And I heard Josh Kraft say during his campaign, he wants to make Boston the re-entry model of the country. And we have the capacity to do that, clearly, right? And so I'm hopeful that a push to be able to facilitate innovative kinds of ways that we can start to do housing, particularly that supports community, particularly for those who are returning back into community.
I think that's critical. Housing is critical. One issue I focused on, which was very disappointing to me, is when I was at Suffolk Superior, we would get transferred cases from various jurisdictions across Massachusetts, Franklin County, Hampshire County, Hampden County, Middlesex, other counties as well, Berkshire. And they would be sent on a bus from their communities into Boston, and they'd say, we have a beautiful place for you called the Pine Street Inn. And they'd come to Boston, and they'd check in at probation. I would say to them, well, where are you living? And they would tell me they have a room reserved at the Pine Street Inn. Well, that's not true. There's no rooms reserved for anybody. But what was happening is these communities were telling people to go to Boston because that's where the services are. But you're homeless in Boston, you don't know anyone, you're living on a cot at a homeless shelter, but you're setting yourself up for failure when you don't have that support network around you, whether it's your family, whether it's your community, your church, your loved ones. But we need to do a better job on reentry services. I do want to acknowledge Sheriff Steve Tompkins. I think he's done a very good job on a lot of those issues, and respect the work he's done on reentry services.
Absolutely. I certainly also appreciate Sheriff Tompkins. We've worked with him for almost 3 decades. Going behind the wall, I'll say he's the only sheriff in the entire Commonwealth, first of all, as a person of color. Second of all, a person who's allowed us to come in with our volunteers to make sure that people can exercise their right to vote. Right? By building the infrastructure kind of ad hoc, we're looking to be able to institutionalize that, and we're hopeful that the City Council will help us to institutionalize that, just as you and I have every right to be able to participate. And we almost have to opt out that we institutionalize the process so that every person who has the right has the infrastructure to exercise that right and to do that intelligently with civic education. Right.
That's right.
So that's our hope. As it stands right now, it's kind of ad hoc, though and we're hopeful to replicate that across the entire Commonwealth. We want to make Suffolk County be the robust model that we can replicate across the Commonwealth. As I said, we just came from this conference that was counties all across the entire Commonwealth that were sheriff's counties, and talking about education. But also we've got to talk about civic participation within those respective houses of correction across the Commonwealth.
That's right. Returning citizens are part of our community. They're our neighbors. They're our family members. They deserve a little bit of respect, and city government, state government, federal government should be there to help them live a healthy and productive life. Returning citizens want everything everyone else wants, and that's to be a productive member of society, to pay their bills, to support a family, to have a job, and to look at their children and have their children look up to them with some respect and dignity. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you also for being willing to come behind the wall. We had extended the invitation during the election,
Yeah.
and you were willing to come. We had to pump the brakes because the administration said pause for a moment, and we're hopeful that will be, that opportunity will come again, and you will continue to come with us. Seize the opportunity to go behind the wall.
I'm looking forward to that, Pastor Hobbs.
Outstanding. Lastly, I want to say that that in that same seat that you're sitting, we had Enrique Pepin, who is for District 5. We also had Ruthie Lejeune, who is at large. City Council is both post the election, and I challenged both of them that while I appreciate that we have the Office of Returning Citizens, while I appreciate we have a budget, what I still think is lacking is that it's not run by a returning citizen. The model of the Office of Returning Citizens was created in D.C. And the franchise, if you will, like for McDonald's, for it to be consistent, is it had to be run by a returning citizen because they have that lived experience. They have that anointing, right, to be able to understand what it feels like to live in a cage, right? And only that person can really fully understand and be able to have other people that they could hire. I've heard people say in a position of leadership that they would never hire a returning citizen who was actually an executive director. And I won't say who that person was,
Yep.
but in both instances, we've not had a person who's run the Office of Returning Citizens with lived experience. And that's problematic. So I challenged Ruth Sheila June. I challenged Enrique Pepe, and they both said challenge accepted, that they would push for that. And I'm extending that challenge to you.
Yes, that's something I would support. I think it's important. Can I give you one quick
Please.
example?
Yes, sir.
When Mayor Flynn was mayor, Boston, you might remember, had a penal commissioner.
I don't.
They had a penal commissioner, and the most qualified person that applied for the open position of penal commissioner was a gentleman with a Corey, an African American gentleman, and so on the merits, this person was the most qualified of the 10 people that applied. They brought the applications to the mayor, and they said, "Here's the most qualified. Here's the second." And he looked at the first person, and he said, "Well, this is probably the person we should hire." And he had an interview with this gentleman, and he said, "Mr. Mayor, can I tell you something?" He said, "Yeah, what is it?" "I have a criminal background." He said, "Well, what did you do?" He said, "This is what I did." And he said, "Well, are you willing to work hard? And are you willing to continue to stay on the positive path that you've been on?" And he said, "Yes, I am." So he picked up the phone and he called up because certainly it would be a story in the media.
Oh, yeah.
And so he wanted the media to find out about it from him, not from someone dropping a dime. So he called up a reporter from the newspaper, and he said, I'm appointing someone commissioner of the penal department, and by the way, the person has a criminal, has a Corey, has a background. And it was a one-day story, and that was the end of it.
Wow.
And the person did an excellent job, and they didn't try to hide it, but they gave him an opportunity to serve because he had lived experience, but also he was the most qualified.
Yes.
So it's about treating people with respect. It's about treating people with dignity. Everyone's made mistakes, and people deserve a second or a third chance, and they want to contribute to society. They want to raise a family. They want to pay their bills, and they want their children to be more successful than they have.
Absolutely. Congresswoman Presley, first African-American woman on the Boston City Council, often says, and I don't know that she's the originator of this, but I've heard Ruthie Lejeune say, and many of us have heard her say, that people closest to the pain should be closest to the power, right? Because you understand what it feels like. And so, again, thank you. So I'm hearing you say challenge accepted, that you agree that you would support a person leading the Office of Returning Citizens with lived experience.
Yes, I would. Yes, I would.
Tremendous, tremendous. Counselor, we've got about 3 minutes. It's always such a pleasure. The time always flies by. But one, thank you. And I don't know, whatever you wanted to be able to articulate, the camera's yours, the mic's yours to address your city. What is it that you would like to say to our listening and viewing audience?
Well, first, Pastor Hobbs, want to say thank you to you for inviting me. I always enjoy being with you and our mutual friend Larry Ellison and the others, Dr. Bradley. But respect you and Pastor Bruce Wall and for your commitment to this church, for this community, this city, giving people a second chance and helping families in need. Want to wish everybody a happy and healthy Christmas, a new year, and even during challenging and difficult times, let's support each other, support our neighbors, never give up on someone that's down on their luck. Everybody deserves another opportunity. And if you see someone in need, whether it's a neighbor or someone at the grocery store or at the coffee store or someone that's struggling, give them a little bit of encouragement, help them out, and that's what Christmas is all about.
Absolutely, absolutely. Counselor Ed Flynn, thank you so much again for being with us, and thank you, our listening and viewing audience. We're going to pause and go to our station ID. We'll be back on the other side of the top of the hour. My guest for the second hour, 5 to 6, will be Counselor Brian Worrell.
Okay, Brian's a good man.
He is. We'll be right back. Thank you again, Counselor.
Thank you, Pastor.